Hello, I am Queen Kunde Enoch. Join us every Tuesday, 8 to 8:30 p.m. on the program Talking Peace, where we raise discourse on how to attain peaceful coexistence and tolerance in our society.
Talking Peace is a production of ZT Communications in partnership with Taraba State Broadcasting Service TSBS Jalingo.
For enquiries and advert placements, please call 0803 454 0469.
Talking Peace is the meeting point. Join us.
Hello, welcome to another edition of the program Talking Peace. Today we have a lot to talk about as we are in times where we need a lot of guide on how we can coexist with one another peacefully. It is worrisome how at a very slight spike of provocation, fights, killings, maiming, destruction takes place these days. Where is our patience? Where is the tolerance with one another? Where is our humanity? These are questions we will seek possible answers as we have an expert on the program today. So stay tuned in as you will meet my guest after this time out. Don't go nowhere.
Hello, I am Queen Kunde Enoch. Join us every Tuesday on the program Talking Peace, where we raise discourse on how to attain peaceful coexistence and tolerance in our society.
Talking Peace is a production of ZT Communications in partnership with Taraba State Broadcasting Service TSBS Jalingo.
For enquiries and advert placements, please call 0803 454 0469.
Talking Peace is the meeting point. Join us.
Welcome back. We are here again on Talking Peace, and like I said, we have an expert in the house to discuss on how to attain peaceful coexistence in these times where violence has become widespread, or should I say pervasive. Now, join me as I welcome on the program Talking Peace, Professor Abbas Bashir. Professor Bashir is the founder of My Taraba Initiative for Peace and Strategic Development here in Jalingo. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
So, let's talk about peaceful coexistence. What do you make of it generally?
Thank you very much. Well, peaceful coexistence implies people living together, accepting their differences, respecting their differences, and working harmoniously within the differences that God created among themselves. And the differences I'm talking about in terms of gender, in terms of culture, in terms of tribe, in terms of religion, and all other things. Or even now you come back to either politics, because you belong to different political parties, doesn't mean that you should be at loggerheads with each other. So peace means accepting ourselves the way we are, the way God has created us, and then we interact peacefully and harmoniously for the benefit of humanity and for the benefit of our families and so on. So peace entails a lot. So maybe as we go along, we give more answers to some of your questions. Well, it goes down to what I said earlier: tolerance and understanding, and above all, patience with one another. If we accept our differences the way we are, if we accept that we cannot all be the same, and we work with that understanding, then there will be peace. But above all, why do we have breach of peace? Breach of peace arises because of simple misunderstanding sometimes, or even complex understanding. But it can also be triggered by actions of other people outside the framework of that conflict. For example, you may have conflict where there is inequality in access to resources, to means of development, or even to the benefits of development. You may have inequality when there is lack of understanding between parties with regard to resource use or resource management. Let me give you an example. Let me use the harder farmer conflicts that we had in Taraba State and many other parts of Nigeria. Why should we have that harder farmer conflict? It is easy to understand why we have to have the harder farmer conflict, not only in Nigeria, in the whole, especially in the north, where climate, global warming and climate change plays a very, very serious factor, but which appears not to be on the surface. People may not look at it that way. Now, that is what I'm saying. Some factors take time external to the environment where you have a conflict may be responsible for the conflict. Climate change is outside the environment where you have, the conflict between farmers and herders. Climate is neither a farmer nor a herder, but it has played a remote role that triggers misunderstanding between farmers and herders. That is one. Another external factor is government. So let me either put it good or bad governance. Where you have good governance, a lot will happen so that government in its day-to-day activities will understand and of course try to manage and provide equity, justice, fairness, and in access to resources and opportunities. But where there is inequality, unfairness, injustice in allocation and distribution of resources, then you have conflict. But this factor is external to the people who are in conflict. The boys or the conflict that happened maybe in the area you're talking about, it may be a conflict. Yes. So the waterboard area, actually I didn't get the information very much about the waterboard area. But I want to believe that it is one of those things that arose because of lack of understanding in access to benefits or resources of development. Or it may as well be triggered by some external factors. For example, if it is religious, a simple misunderstanding between a Muslim boy and another Christian boy may trigger some crisis. But that crisis was not as a result of religion that started between the two guys. But if the fellow Muslim or fellow Christians come to, join forces with their fellow and fight the other guy, then others will interpret it as a religious problem, and then the whole town will be on fire before you realize it. I will give you another example. I was part of a problem in Europe some time ago. There was a problem between the university and the court. And the court ordered for the attachment of the university's property. Instead of attaching anything other than students' vehicles, the police attached, I impounded a student's vehicle, student's bus, around the area we call Budirada House. And there was almost a near crisis there. So what I mean here is this. If there was any fight between the police and the students in that bus, and students are allergic to police uniform. Once there is crisis between the police and the students, before you realize it, some people may take it to be Muslim fighting Christians, people fighting Hausa, Muslim fighting Southerners, or whatever. But before you realize the truth, the damage would have been done. Half of Geneva have been on fire. By the time you realize the problem, it was a simple thing. The court should have ordered attachment of the university property, not the students' university property of the university students. So that was a very serious mistake external to the environment of the conflict. You understand that it is removing the cause of the conflict. So where there is good governance, where there is good understanding, and indeed good governance also suggests that you take care of poverty, you take care of unemployment, you take care of injustice, and all other things that government should provide to people should be, fair, just, and equitable. So once the government does not take this into account, and they play a role in whatever form that fits the interest of the people in government, then the outcome will be disastrous. So another thing is moral decadence. For us, moral decadence, yes, that is people's. In these days, our youth in particular, there is moral degeneration. There's moral degeneration. Look at Jalingo, for example. I'll give another instance. You may be aware that some time ago in Jalingo, there were serious problems around, which led the government to take a very good but serious decision, banning taking up in the night. And that was a good decision the government did, because all over the town, you have youth groups from taking up, carrying daggers, carrying knives, and so on and so on, just attacking similar other groups in another part of the city. So if the government had not intervened in that regard, stopping the movement of the President at night in Jalingo, the result would have been the whole of Jalingo would have been in crisis. And you wouldn't know who is responsible, but simply group of youth. Who are they? Where are they? And let me tell you, before then, there were over 100 such groups in Jalingo, each living on its own. So what I'm trying to say here is that the causes of breach of peace are numerous, but definitely it takes good governance, peaceful, the mutual understanding, respect for one another, that will stop the chances of any conflict arising. So I think that's the way I want to put it. I've digressed too much today. Yes.
A wonderful recipe there for us to have attain peaceful coexistence, but quite difficult for a lot of, like you did mention, the youth these days to assimilate and put into practice. Moral dissidence, I want to hold my hands on that so we can talk more on it. For very slightest, reasons, the provocation, should violence be the reaction to follow?
No, not that violence, dialogue.
Dialogue.
Not violence, dialogue. You have to engage yourself in dialogue. That is why you always have to have an arbiter. Once there is sign of any conflict, I think the authorities in power will realizing this likelihood, not only authorities, even neighborhood, people in the neighborhood, once they perceive some danger, they should immediately intercede and create an environment for dialogue and understanding, so that you stop the crisis from happening. There are two things: you either stop the crisis before it happens, or you intervene to minimize its effect when it happens, and even to stop it, not to extend further. So it requires dialogue from whichever quarter. That is why organizations like our own, the civil society organizations, are important here. There are certain things that civil society organizations can do, which the government may not do on its own. Civil society organizations, they just stick their neck to do what to have been done, which government may not be too concerned about, but which has implications even for good governance, without expecting any price or any benefit or any profit in doing so. So CSOs are very important in this regard. So both CSOs, government, people in the neighborhood, local leaders, and so on, should be on alert always. If there's anything like that, immediate intervention, especially to broker peace, is always very important. The best way to manage peace is not to allow it to manage violence, for example. Is not to allow it to happen at all. So therefore, there is need for brokering peace even before the conflict happens. Let me give one example again. Take the case of fishermen and others. I wouldn't want to call it either farmers or whatever. Fishermen, in this Taraba, in this Karilabiro area, all those riverine areas. So we have ponds. Okay? Yes, we have ponds, Maraneo area, and so we have ponds which are owned by people. But somebody may claim ownership of a pond. Just because of that misunderstanding in the ownership of a pond for fishing can trigger serious crisis. First, between two individuals, and it will extend into families, and therefore finally it will extend into the whole town, and even more. So once there is any sign of misunderstanding between two parties with regard to ownership of a pond, for example, the leaders of the village or the area should intercede immediately. If they cannot, they should report it to the appropriate authority who can handle it better. So that's what I mean. So there are a lot to do to mitigate or to stop crisis or conflict from happening. But most important, yes, exactly, to down the violent tendencies. But like I said, the best way is not to even allow the crisis to happen. Once you see the signs, please just get up and do something to make sure that you stop it from escalating, therefore not leading to any serious violence. So no matter how violent it is, let it not go into violence, not to talk of being serious.
If I understand you, Prof, you're talking about early warning signals there. But another worrisome aspect in the society now is the level of respect we hold for those in power, be it government, traditional institution, religious institution, and the rest. There's no respect for these institutions as such as we used to know in those days. For instance, a Miangwa who wakes up to, talk to the youth not to do something which he considers wrong, will jettison his instruction and go ahead and do such a thing until destruction. And sometimes lives are lost. So,
that is lack of respect for traditional leadership, lack of respect for traditional institutions. But unfortunately, also sometimes you find that the traditional institutions themselves are responsible for the problem, because they do not. Yeah, some of them do not act in a way that they earn respect. I don't want to digress to that, but I just want to say some of them act in a way that they don't earn respect. As a district, also as a Bahanga, for example. And all I can do always is to follow people, Baniko or Banita or something like that. They are not respecting. But unfortunately also, the youth of these days also have their minds seriously polluted, probably by the advent of social media and of course, yes, social media and other relationships. And of course there is also one problem. when you have students growing up and passing through primary and secondary schools, in the past, we used to have good respect for our teachers, we follow instructions, and we have clubs and societies in schools that will help in correcting the morality of our youth, just for primary and secondary schools. For example, you have leadership clubs, you create peace clubs, peace societies, and so on and so forth. But even environmental groups, people who will ensure that the environment is properly maintained, even from that level, what I call catch them young. So if now this, I'm not sure this is happening again anymore. But more importantly also, families sometimes, moral decadence can start from the home. It depends, yes, from the families. It depends on how they manage their kids. If your children are not well maintained, if their children are not well protected, and you allow them to do anything just like that, then anything can happen. But again, what is the country? Sometimes poverty is the country. Poverty may be the country. You have a family, they have no other option but to send their small ones to errand, houking and doing all kind of menial things that they not pay them too much. And therefore they become victims, of bad elements, or even they turn out to become bad elements themselves because of bad association with other bad candidates. So moral decadence in our youth is a serious problem, and they don't respect their leaders, either religious, traditional rulers, and so on and so forth. So I think the society completely needs some kind of reorientation, value reorientation. Let me put it that value reorientation. So especially in this country, today, corruption has become the in thing in the whole country. You can't stop corruption. I don't know how, but it has become part and parcel of the life of an average Nigerian. Especially, okay, let me just stop with them, not to mention other people.
All right. Of course, we're bearing our minds here on how we can attain peaceful coexistence. So, at some point, I see you want to hope to maybe retain some level of respect as well for the other person's dignity. But of course, we must call a spade, Prof, because we need to really get those very clear things we need to go back to attain peaceful coexistence within our society. Now, you did mention a lot of those factors, the problems. You talked about the advent of social media, respect and obedience, clubs, catch them young, family values, poverty, economic situation, corruption, on and on. The list is endless. Bad governance, injustice, and all. Now, but this one you did have on the advent of social media. I mean, my youngsters listening may not really agree with you. Or what do you think, Prof? How has the social media in any way contributed in, us not enjoying peaceful coexistence?
Well, they may not agree with me, but the reality is there on the ground. The wrong use of social media. Social media can bring about a lot of positive changes in our lives, but if you use it properly. But if you use social media to abuse and maim other people, you use social media to degrade other people or other communities or other societies, you use social media to downgrade somebody's religion, against your own, and so on and so forth. This is bad use of social media. But if you use social media to promote trade and business, you use social media to promote education and the sending and so forth, social media is good. So that's why I say, unfortunately, we have different types of social media. But actors on social media can act also in different ways. But there are numerous kind of acts that you find on the social media that are anything that's not approvable.
Okay.
Yeah, when people say that social media, can be used anyhow, then I think that's the greatest mistake. If you use social media without due respect to other people's freedom, but you are creating a problem. And of course, if you say that your freedom ends where my own freedom starts, you can't take the freedom to infringe on my own freedom. So you have a limit, I have a limit. So let us observe our limits and let us also behave well. And respect very important is let us use the social media. I remember the end of Moody sometimes even made a statement that if you have to use the social media, use it to promote education, to promote trade and business, and then you see how you can advance your economy. So many now graduate from schools, they can't find jobs because of population explosion. The demand for jobs is not as much as the population the availability of jobs is not as much as the population is demanding. So why can't we use the social media to create means of making income, among the youth, or even the youth themselves, instead of using social media, WhatsApp, especially Facebook, to report things that are otherwise, abominable.
And sometimes even trigger things that are not true that will really escalate into crisis.
Exactly. In fact, in fact, reporting giving false information. You are witness to some cases that happen, and even a very bad crisis will have happened in South Africa. But because they are blacks, we are here in Nigeria also blacks, and you can't read the nature of the environment from the video. You just send it on our social media saying, this is a fight between Kona and different people in Jalingo, Kona and Mene. You understand? So the ignorant will just take it as it is. What is happening? Kona are fighting Mene, Mene is fighting Kona. And then that has nothing to do with Nigeria at all, not to talk of Kona and Mene. So that's the bad news of social media that I'm talking about. But unfortunately, it has affected many of our youth. Let me give you another example. Why should a married woman with family continue to present and post, like a free person? Presenting herself on social media like WhatsApp and Facebook as if she is free. Who are you advertising yourself to? To your husband? No, you are already with him. Who else? So these are the examples I'm talking about. I can't find it reasonable. Okay, let me just bother with so much with my.
That's a very wonderful examples you have illustrated there on the use of social the problems. One of the problems you did mention, which was the advent of social media as part of the problem for us enjoying our peaceful coexistence. But you have actually explained it in clear terms, and then I hope that we do understand it in that light. Now, but then as we close to the end of today's edition of the program, we have identified the problems, we have identified the gaps, we have also even looked at, from your perspective, some of those things we would actually do to douse these violent tendencies. Look now at how do we go back to the good old days with all of these very negative factors, numerous problems, mitigating against our enjoying peaceful coexistence. But how do we go back to the good old days to enjoy peaceful coexistence, in summary?
Now, first of all, we need especially, if you look at the future of a country, you look at its present. Presently in Nigeria, the youth constitutes the largest majority of the population. The youth are largely unemployed. The youth are largely not well educated. School dropouts are many, uneducated. Some that are educated cannot have jobs. There's unfairness in terms of resource allocation and distribution, especially when it comes to groups and so on. So the way forward is, first of all, let us talk about good governance. Without good governance, most of these things cannot be attained. All right. Now we know that we have freedom of expression. All right, and freedom of press, freedom of association, and so on and so forth. But like I said, the freedom also has a limit. But in good governance, you should allow freedom of expression as long as that freedom does not infringe on somebody else's freedom. All right? Now, when we talk about injustice, unfairness, and other things, democratization is one of them. We're in a democratic politics, but I don't know if we can truly call on top of democracy, democratic, where votes are snatched, those big politicians, they use the youth to yes, as jobs and eventually abandon them, knowing fully well they are either not educated or they are educated but not employed, and they are even hungry. All right. So now also there's also the problem of participation, or what they are calling inclusiveness. Whatever you do, all the sectors, all the sections of your community should feel a sense of inclusiveness. Gender, the disabled persons, uneducated, the educated should have a feeling of inclusiveness in whatever the government does. Their interests should be taken care of, and they should fully see that their interests will be taken care of. So that is another thing.
So we must say very big thank you to you now for talking to us today on Talking Peace about how we can enjoy peaceful coexistence, Professor Bashir Abbas.
Thank you very much.
Now, Professor Abbas is of the My Taraba Initiative for Peace and Strategic Development, giving us those antidotes on how we can enjoy peaceful coexistence. And none of it sounded something too difficult for us to do. We've done it before. Now we can do it again if all of us want to live in peace. And I do hope that that's our desire. That's how much we take on the program today. I'm yours sincerely, Iwe Sekunde Eno, asking you to join us again for another enlightening package here. And bye for now.
Hello, I am Queen Kunde Eno. Join us every Tuesday, 8 to 8:30 p.m. on the program Talking Peace, where we raise discourse on how to attain peaceful coexistence and tolerance in our society.
Talking Peace is a production of ZT Communications in partnership with Taraba State Broadcasting Service TSBS Jalingo.
For enquiries and advert placements, please call 0803 454 0469.
Talking Peace is the meeting point. Join us.
Peace. peace in our home.